Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Operational Services Committee meeting. It is July the 9th, 2024. I am your chair, Councillor Chris Thiessen, and joined today by committee members Councillor Blackmore, Councillor Berg, and Mayor Jackie Clayton. With that, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Berg?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right, that motion is in order. We'll call to question.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that motion carries. Moving right along into our report section, I'll turn it over to our Chief, Brian Glavin, for Operational Services for service area updates. Chief Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Starting in Engineering Services, we've posted a request for quotes for the 2024-2025 Bridge Inspection Program. Recently, tenders have closed for the reconstruction of Muskogee Park tennis and basketball courts and trail, as well as the storm pipe and outfall rehabilitation and the road rehabilitation program Phase 4. In transit, the construction of the heated shelters are expected to be completed by the end of July. Ridership continues to grow with overall ridership up 63% year to date over last year. In Environment and Parks, Environment staff will be monitoring water quality in the city over the next few weeks, just as part of their regular work. And in Transportation, crews were providing traffic control for the Canada Day Parade, as well as for the annual Eastlink Centre Triathlon, along with street sweeping and asphalt repair in advance of that to make sure it went off smoothly. With that, I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you for your update, Chief Glavin. I have Councillor Blackmore in the queue currently, and we'll see if any other questions arise.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. Chief Glavin, I noticed when I was at Muskogee Park for Canada Days and I walked past the lawn bowling site, it's got new turf stretched on it, but the, I don't know what you call them, curbing is not in very good shape. I'm wondering if there's further renovation to take place at the lawn bowling site. Chief
Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. I'll have to follow up internally just to see what the plan is for that.
Okay, thank you.
CEO Burke.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. I'll have to follow up specifically on the curbing, although I do know that there are further renovations planned at the end of the season. There was a window to get the turf in before Canada Day, so we proceeded with that component, and that there, based on the engagement sessions were in the spring, there was some further work planned for September. We'll follow up on specifically the curbing.
Thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Look for any other questions from committee or council. Seeing none. Thank you for your update, Chief Glavin. I'll hand it back to you, actually, for a second report and on the Bear River Corridor Assessment for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. So every 5 years, the city undertakes a detailed external analysis of the corridor to update flood modeling, bank stability, top of bank setback framework, as well as stormwater outfall assessments. And I'm going to leave the rest for Mr. Harvard to introduce our consultants and go through the report.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief Glavin. Welcome to our presenters. I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Harvard.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm here to introduce Shannon and Logan from McElhaney, who led the team which undertook the Bear River Corridor study. They're going to provide a quick overview of what the study looked at, as well as some of the study outcomes.
Thank you, Mike. Previous studies through the Bear River Corridor were done individually and separately, without the benefit of considering flood hazard, slope stability, and riparian impacts together. It was up to the stakeholder to interpret, combine the information, and determine what was required to develop near the corridor. This recent study pulls together all the different types of risk areas to give a cohesive look at the corridor. For the flood hazard and inundation part of the study, hydraulic and hydrologic assessments were completed for 8 different return periods, ranging from 1 in 2 year to 1 in 1,000 year, with results being calibrated against historical photos and known information. From this assessment, flood hazard maps were created to show the floodway which is the deepest, fastest, most destructive part of the flood, and the flood fringe, which is a shallower flooded area outside the floodway where the water moves slower. The 1 in 100 year maps were used as the flood hazard component for the top of bank framework. Based on the current municipal development plan, no development is to occur within the floodway or the flood fringe. The slope stability assessment looked at overall stability relating to geohazard risks along the corridor and identified areas of potential concern using LiDAR, imagery, and visual inspection. Based on this assessment, lines were mapped for the current top of bank, the estimated development line, as well as a 40-meter offset from the estimated development line, each requiring different levels of geotechnical investigation for development in these areas. The top of bank framework was created based on the results of these assessments, which came out to 3 different areas. Areas where no development should occur, areas of restricted development, and no restrictions on development. Out of this, 3 different zones were created and mapped, which were no development and 2 restricted development zones. The no development zone, which is all areas within the floodway, flood fringe, and top of bank line established by the geotechnical engineer. The general riparian areas of the Bear River are within the flood fringe, which puts this in the no development zone. The 2 restricted development zones are based on geotechnical requirements, one being between the no development zone and the estimated development line, and one between the estimated development line and a 40-meter offset. These 2 zones have similar requirements, but require deeper boreholes and more frequent intervals for sampling in Zone 1 as opposed to Zone 2. One of the main goals of this framework is to provide clarity in development requirements and to eliminate guesswork on where and what needs to be done. This well-defined and straightforward framework will aid the city, developers, and other stakeholders in understanding and accountability for development near the corridor. We also put together a 2-page quick reference guide that shows a summary of the development zone restrictions and an example of what these look like on a map. I would be happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shannon, Logan, and Mike. I got Councillor Berg in the queue so far.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Thiessen. I really nerded out on this report, so thank you. Some of it was well over my head. I'm not an engineer, but I appreciate the maps and the research that went into this. The best thing that I appreciate as a city councillor is this report is proactive rather than reactive. So this identifies areas of concern, and there were a few areas of concern. I'm just wondering on recommendations, are any of these urgent that we need to address immediately, or are these something that we can look at over the next couple of years?
Yeah, whoever wants to take it, Shannon, Logan, Mike.
Thanks for the question. The geotechnical recommendations or identified locations aren't immediate areas to get after, like to look into. However, it's something that is put on the administration to start phasing into what to look for and prioritize those.
Okay, thank you. I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So to me, the museum is of concern, and so this would be more of a question for administration. Have we considered building a berm, or are we looking at any solutions in the near future around preserving or creating a barrier to protect some of those museum properties?
Mr. Harvard.
Thank you through the chair. Not to my knowledge, have we yet looked at a berm around the museum specifically?
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I do have Councillor Blackmore in the queue, but I'm going to piggyback off of one of Councillor Berg's questions because I had it in my own. So looking at some of the storm outfall photos later in the report, looks like, some are awesome and some look dilapidated and squashed and bent and, in need of some kind of repair. In the report, it says that it's nothing urgent. I guess this is a question for Mr. Harvard. Based off of this report, it's a nice compilation of a bunch of individual work all laid out into your department so that we can make the best decisions. So how does this better inform you, and how often would we go to work on fixing those storm outfalls?
Thank you. Through the chair. We inspect the outfalls additionally, like beyond this report, every year. We use this report to form the basis of how we undertake repairs. So annually, a capital construction program does repair the worst outfalls, and this report does form the basis of that. In addition, administration will undertake further inspections to narrow down exactly which outfalls need to be addressed, and then those outfalls are put onto the capital construction program.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for that. I'll go over to Councillor Blackmore.
I know that the soil construction of the creek tends to be more vertical layering rather than horizontal layering. I know there's some areas that may be of more concern because they weren't protected historically, such as the mobile home park behind the Southside Safeway. There's been issues with that in the past. Dewatering technology has really come a long ways in the last 20 years. I'm wondering if there's any potential to use dewatering to protect those places that are not as well, that are not as far back from the creek bank as maybe they should be.
Mr. Harvard.
Thank you, through the chair. So in order to determine the best technology, we definitely would have to do a more site-specific analysis. The intention of this report is a little bit higher level. The technologies certainly can be very useful for repairs such as the 68th Avenue slope, which did see the use of some dewatering. But again, that would require a much more in-depth site-specific geotechnical analysis to determine the best solutions.
But it is top of mind, I'm thinking.
Through the chair, yes, definitely we would be looking at that for any slope repairs as part of that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, look for any other questions. I do have one more while people gather their thoughts. Like Councillor Berg, I was geeking out over this. I sit on the chair of the Mighty Peace Watershed Alliance and have for the last 10 out of 11 years on council. It's been pretty, I love. I was looking at your engagement. So public engagement is pretty important to the city of Grande Prairie and our council. I found that the report part of the public engagement didn't identify any stakeholders that you had spoken with. Can you elaborate the reasoning behind that, or if it was just a miss, and what kind of stakeholders you did engage with when doing things like the flood mapping?
Thank you, through the chair. The stakeholder list included all of the local developers as well as a lot of other industry stakeholders that have either properties adjacent to the corridor as well as anyone who works in and or around the corridor. Our engineering development list of developers was directly engaged on this and reached out to attend the stakeholder session.
Okay. So as one of those stakeholders, did it happen to be the Mighty Peace Watershed Alliance? And I only ask because they are regional. They do have their own flood maps, and either they could benefit from the work that's done here, or they could help with the work that was being done there. So was Mighty Peace Watershed Alliance engaged at all in this process?
Through the chair, I do not believe that Mighty Peace was engaged as part of the stakeholder engagement.
Okay, well, something to be mindful. I think in the future we do have localized regional expertise as well that can benefit projects such as these and can gain benefit from projects such as these. So, thanks for that consideration. And I'll look around for any other questions. If there are none, I will entertain a motion. Councillor Blackmore.
I move committee accept this report for information.
The motion is in order. I'll call to question. And that motion carries. Thank you so much to all of you for the work on this project. I know it's going to benefit our community in the long run. So thanks so much. Moving right along, we have our No correspondence, no other business. And moving right into bylaw and policy review, and we have a few amendments to our transit system bylaw, C1282A, and I'll look to Chief Glavin to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. As part of our continuous review of bylaws and policies, we have Mr. Harvard has reviewed transit system bylaw C1282A and has identified some housekeeping amendments, and he is here to answer any questions. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Harvard.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. I'll put some quick notes on these items. As the committee has had an opportunity to read this report, I will provide a high-level synopsis and take any questions afterwards. City bylaws are reviewed on a regular basis every 4 years, or if there are significant changes. 2019 was the last time that the transit service bylaw was reviewed. The updates that are presented are housekeeping in nature and as a result of changes in organizational definitions, and also to include vaping as one of the prohibited activities on transit property. Administration is recommending that Operational Service Committee recommend Council give 3 readings to Bylaw C1282A, amendment to the Transit System Bylaw. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Harvard. I'll look to committee. I got Councillor Blackmore in the queue.
Mr. Harvard, when I read this over, I don't see any material changes whatsoever. Is that correct? It's tidying up and redefining things.
Through the chair, absolutely correct. These are just housekeeping items.
I'd make the motion if you're ready for it.
I do have some questions as chair, just largely housekeeping stuff. So just a couple comments. Thanks for the report, Mr. Harvard. Just in the creation of, I guess, the definitions, I noticed that item 2.3 under definitions, clerk was deleted, but 2.3 wasn't. So that would sort of mess up our numerology there in that section. I also going down further to 2.12, senior management. As I read the new policy, senior management is here to replace director. But it falls so far down. Senior management in this new bylaw is squashed between proof of payment, transfer, transit bus shelter. And I think it should be up more with the people, probably in that 2.3 area where we deleted clerk. Also, department lead was another one that was added in there. So department lead is actually above senior management in the definitions. But senior management is mentioned 6 times to 1 time versus department lead. So I think we should probably push that up there. That's maybe just me being picky. The other one is really under conduct on transit property. I know that there's an extensive list that's there and that we did add vape. But one thing that I didn't see on the list was illicit drugs like needles and stuff like that. I know that that was partially covered under item 4.1G, inhale a solvent or other intoxicating inhaled substance. But under H, it says smoke, vape, carry a lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, e-cigarette, e-cigar, marijuana within 5 meters of shelter. But nowhere in there does it mention anything about illicit drugs, maybe needles. I mean, we don't have to detail, or illegal behavior. That is also not on there. So if I don't have I'm just a chair, so I can't make motions to amend. But if I were to make a motion to amend, at least on conduct on transit property, I would say under item G, that a person must not do any of the following in or on any transit property, consume illicit drugs, inhale a solvent, or other intoxicating inhaled substances. And I think that would probably cover all of our bases for safety. I'd hate for someone to get out on a technicality because they're injecting someone in there, and we don't have that in our civil bylaws. And then there was one more, just under the definition of peace officer. So it seems like we did a lot of wordsmith around there. The old definition says means a member of the RCMP, a bylaw enforcement officer, or a community peace officer of the city. And so we gave it a new definition that says means a bylaw enforcement officer appointed by the city, a peace officer, a member of the municipal police services, or a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I think we probably could have just added the municipal police service to the old definition. And I'm confused over a peace officer being in the definition of peace officer. So I was wondering if that's even necessary, if we could just strike that, or if it's a redundancy.
Thank you for your comments, Chair Thiessen. I think they're excellent items and things that we will look at in terms of making some changes to this potentially, and then maybe bringing this back to committee for review. In terms of the definition of peace officer, I would have to confer with some other people in terms of that, because I'm not the subject matter expert on that, but I will follow up on that item.
Okay, no, thank you. Mr. CEO?
Thanks, Chair Thiessen, and just feedback from our solicitor that that'd be something we'd recommend we take away. So if we wanted not to pass this, we'd bring this back forward to the next committee, and we could do that review here. So we give you the accurate advice.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like I said, I can't make a motion here, so any of these changes probably would have to go back and then come back for a review. So if there's a member on committee that wants to send it back, to bring it back to our next committee meeting, and those changes can be made, we can review those, that would be awesome. Or we can approve it as is.
I would suggest to the CAO that you don't have to pay staff to do this. You could just get Councillor Thiessen to review bylaws.
Yeah, pretty good at policy. Been doing it for 12 years.
I'm happy with the policy as it is, and so I would move that committee recommend council give 3 readings to bylaw C1282A, being an amendment to the transit system bylaw.
That motion is in order. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, I won't support this motion, especially under the item that I expressed earlier around illegal and illicit drugs. I think that's a big miss in our community, and it could come back to bite us in the behind. So with that little change, everything else is just clerical stuff as far as I'm concerned, and I agree with Councillor Blackmore there. If we're going to be as specific to add things such as vape and not include illicit drugs, then I can't approve this policy. Thank you. Mr. CEO.
I would add one point that we don't need a bylaw for something that is already illegal. So on that one small point, that we do have some satisfaction. We are covered through it's illegal through law, not through bylaw. But if there was further analysis, we could look at that. But to that point, we don't need a bylaw for things that are clearly illegal.
Right, like graffiti on public property.
Like illegal drug use.
But vandalism is a criminal offense too. Just saying. All right, call the question.
Councillor Berg in favor.
And that motion carries. And thank you very much, Mr. Harvard. We'll move right on to our outstanding items list. Chief Glavin.
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. Item 1314 was covered off in the Financial and Administrative Committee, so we can remove that from this outstanding item.
Awesome. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Burke?
Oh, just a motion. I'd like to move committee receive the July 9th outstanding items list as presented for information.
That sounds like it's in order. We'll call the question.
As amended. Thank you.
Yeah, that was covered in the notes.
In favor.
And that motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending today's meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.